It is the end of an era, and by end of an era I mean the end of... Fantasy and magical reality are particularly interesting genres in psychology, and here's why. When we experience trauma in the real world, there's not a lot to see. It involves a lot of inner work. But in the fantasy world, trauma is often worked through in a visually explosive way. And The Witcher has executed this perfectly. So let's discuss why Geralt and Yennefer's post-traumatic growth created the perfect enemies to lovers storyline. Everyone's favourite monster slayer didn't actually have the easiest start to life. Raised in poverty by his mother, a talented sorceress, Geralt's father, a warrior, died before he was born. Due to this poverty, his mother abandoned him to the Witcher cause, believing it would give him purpose and goals in life. It goes without saying that Geralt experienced a huge amount of trauma in his childhood. From poverty to abandonment by his mother, to the physical abuse he was subject to during his Witcher training, and the emotional neglect he would have experienced at the hands of his caregivers. And, not to mention being trained as a killing machine. It's no wonder that Geralt coped with this unprocessed trauma by detaching himself from his feelings and isolating himself by becoming completely immersed in his Witcher job. I think Geralt is the perfect example of a detached self-soother. The detached self-soother is a harmful coping mechanism we develop to deal with unprocessed trauma. It tries to protect us from our challenging thoughts, feelings and memories by encouraging us to push our loved ones away so we can find ways to self-soothe or self-stimulate. This can be anything from binge eating or drinking, overspending, over-exercising, overworking or, excessively slaying monsters. However, the arrival of Ciri, his child of surprise, in his life changed everything. For the first time in his adult life, Geralt finally had somebody to take care of and to love. He could no longer detach himself from the world and his feelings. Then along came... Yen is a spectacular character. And her trauma journey in many ways mirrors Geralt's. Her father hated and rejected her because of her deformities and her elven heritage. Similarly, her mother and peers neglected and abused her. And just like Geralt, an outcast, she was saved by the magical community. Tissaia saves Yen, bringing her to Aretuza for her magical education. But still, that road was harmful and emotionally neglectful, and the teachings often very traumatic. Not to mention the very painful surgery and magical transformation she went through to become beautiful. Yen, like Geralt, has a very vulnerable inner child, but where his path taught him to detach and self-soothe, her magical path encouraged self-aggrandizing to keep herself emotionally safe. The sorcerers at Aretuza were often arrogant, exclusive and elitist. As the very vulnerable Yen grew and developed within their ranks, she was quickly taught to suppress her emotions by making others feel small, acting in a grandiose way, and inflating her sense of self. We call this coping mechanism the self-aggrandizer, and just like it did for Yen, it appears to protect a very vulnerable and wounded inner child from further hurt. It gives the illusion that Yen is impenetrable to further trauma. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, go and hit the like button. This is a brand new series for me and I'd love to know if you're enjoying it so I can create more. But it wasn't actually Yen and Geralt's harmful coping mechanisms that emotionally finally brought them together. It was... Ciri, in many ways, was the person who sparked post-traumatic growth for both Geralt and for Yen. Not only did it force them to work together, but it also meant that they both made significant mistakes and were quite vulnerable throughout the journey. Geralt's detached self-soother often made him emotionally distant or push away his loved ones like Ciri and Yen. And Yen's self-aggrandizer encouraged her to pursue her own goals, no matter who got hurt in the process, which was often Geralt or Ciri. However, Yen and Geralt supported and forgave one another. They tried to make it right with one another when they'd messed up, and in doing so, they slowly allowed each other to be truly vulnerable with one another. Feeling safe in our vulnerability is such an important element of trauma recovery. It allows us to start really chipping away at some of the very negative core beliefs that we have built about ourselves. And it allows us to start emotionally letting people in. For example, Geralt allowing Yen to be vulnerable and loving her for it showed her that she could be loved for more than just her beauty and her magical powers. That very neglected child she once was finally grew to believe that she could be fully loved by someone. And a huge nod to the costume department at The Witcher for these two scenes. The first is when Geralt first meets Yen in season 1, and the second is for when Geralt realises he's completely in love with her, and she with him in season 3. In this first scene in season 1, Yen is strikingly beautiful as always, but her costume resembles a cage around her heart, and her makeup and hair choices really give a don't mess with me vibe. Whereas in season 3, they have reused the costume but adapted it to show her vulnerability. We see the cage around her heart gone and her hair and makeup softer, resembling her being comfortable and safe in her vulnerability around Geralt and Ciri. By Yen giving Geralt the space to be vulnerable and consistently showing up for him showed Geralt that he wouldn't always be abandoned by the people he loved. And therefore he didn't need to consistently push away the people he loved in fear of this abandonment happening. One of the biggest ways we see the true shift from enemies to lovers was in letting each other go at the end of season 3, to go save their child, the person they loved most in the world, Ciri. At the end of the season, both feel secure enough to part ways, knowing their love and bond is strong, and that they trusted each other enough to do the right thing for Ciri. This wasn't just a shift from enemies to lovers, it was a shift from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth, and that's what made it so visually spectacular. Will you be coming back for season 4 now that our fan favourite Henry Cavill has left? Let me know in the comments below. It was a joy to have you here, and stay tuned and subscribe for the next episode of Psychology on Screen. I'll see you soon, my love.